Okay, so thanks everyone for joining us. What we're going to do today in about 30 minutes is to try and cover some of what we think are the most salient highlights in terms of what's new with AI. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Emily Rush. I'm the AI Education Specialist in the Office of Academic Affairs. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Smith. I am a senior instructional designer with Citi. Nice to see you all.
All right, so what I wanted to do was start out with this quote from Andrei Karpathy, and this was something that was posted on social media over the winter break. So on December 26th, Andrei Karpathy, and if you don't know who he is a leading AI researcher and engineer working for Tesla and OpenAI. And the gist of his post was that even this engineer and researcher is so overwhelmed with AI that he can't keep up, which for me was somewhat reassuring to think that even someone who's sort of highly involved in all of these AI developments is feeling as overwhelmed as some of the rest of us. What I wanted to do by starting with that is to think about how this might normalize the sense of overwhelm if someone who's working so closely in these deeply embedded systems and building them also feels the stresses of the pace of AI development and the nature of this current moment that we're in with AI. And so what that does is leads us to our framing for today's workshop and or session, I guess I should call it. And so when Laura and I were thinking about today's session, we got to talking about organizational psychologist Adam Grant and what he has to say about expertise. And we liked that his discussion of expertise was really, it's not about how much you know about something, it's how well you synthesize. And so, what is important with this mindset is not collecting all the facts. So, that's not what we're going to do today. We're not going to tell you about every new feature of every new version of ChatGPT and Claude that's come out in the last 3 months, but we're going to try and help you connect the dots about what we think is important about those developments. So, what I'm going to do, first of all, is start out by just telling you a little bit about what's happening at Rush in terms of AI. I know a few of you have already heard this, so I'm going to ask you to bear with me. And I promise we'll move on to territory that's maybe new for those of you who've heard this, as well as those of you who haven't. And so, starting out with just some recent developments at Rush, I wanted to highlight what's going on with the system and then what's going on in the university. And then we'll talk about broader generative AI developments and some of their implications for research and teaching. Right. So in terms of system development, some of you may or may not know that Rush has formalized an AI governance structure. It's called the AI Center of Excellence. And this is the structure that provides system level governance for tools. And what that means is they have developed and actually revised an AI policy, which is the next bullet point. And they are also the body that will vet any AI tools that anyone requests. Some of the other things that the AI Center of Excellence does is they are closely related to how AI is deployed at the institution and the organization. And right now, that's largely through Microsoft Copilot. And I know that many of you may have used Copilot. You may not be aware that at the organization, there is actually a two-tier system for Copilot. So one is a free Copilot option that everyone has. And there's a second option that involves an enterprise level, it's a premium AI level account. And what that means is for the few people that do have it, that is a more secure AI option. If you have questions about any of this while I'm talking, feel free to pop it in the chat and I can try to answer it or someone else can answer it. There will be some changes coming about with that two-tier system. What I think that means is that everyone will continue to have the free Copilot account. And in the next few months, some of us who do have those premium accounts that DNIS was previously letting us have those for free, and they're going to start charging us for that. So that's something to keep in mind. That will be happening probably early in the new fiscal year, so around July. And then the last point in terms of what the system is doing with regard to AI and platforms is they are developing a robust training infrastructure predominantly around Copilot. And you can find out more information about this on the SharePoint site, and the QR code on the right-hand side of the screen will lead you there. Some of their key initiatives around Copilot include a Copilot champions group, and they do let additional people join to gain proficiency around Copilot use. And for those who are eager to do more advanced things with AI, they do have a Copilot AI agents group as well. All right, in terms of the system, I guess that's what we talked about in terms of the system. In terms of the university, just some updates. Some of you may or may not be aware that the university is in the process of trying to form a University Faculty Council AI subgroup, which will predominantly be tasked with developing and revising AI-facing guidance, which may include the current AI policy on the university side. They also may make recommendations regarding AI training to the university. And hopefully this group will be operational in the next couple of months. Yeah, Laura.
Just once you wrap up, I just want to direct you to a question in the chat from Renata about how do they get access to premium Copilot accounts?
Sure. I can pause right now and say that to get access to Premium Copilot, you can go to the SharePoint site that I list the QR code on the previous screen, and you can request the premium account. DNIS may no longer be granting free access. I don't know about that, so you may have to give your department authorization code to get the account. And if you get stuck, just email me and I can help you out. All right, in terms of other things on the university side, there have been discussions about strategic directions around AI at the university. The Office of Academic Affairs has submitted a report to the university and president, and there are discussions about an AI survey that will be hopefully disseminated this spring, possibly to get a sense of how students are using AI, or it may more broadly be maybe disseminated more broadly to get a sense of how AI is being used across the university as well. We are also exploring AI enterprise options at the university, one of which is Boodlebox. That is still a little bit unclear, but hopefully I'll know more in the next few days about that. And so once I know, I will be happy to share with anyone who asks. And then finally, in terms of the university, we have been having regular faculty development sessions and trainings like we're having today. And I also convene an AI community of practice that meets approximately monthly. So if you're interested in any of those, feel free to reach out. Any other questions in the chat? No, okay. All right, so, oh yeah, someone came off mute.
Hey, it's Adam, Emily.
Yep.
Previously, I think it was in a different presentation, you had mentioned that departments might start to pick up the costs for some of the co-pilot stuff. So I just wanted to ask how we can offload co-pilot if we don't want that anymore, if we have signed on to it.
Yeah, thank you. So I am working on figuring out what that process will look like with Patrick Healy, who is the systems AI strategic lead. And so I will figure out what the process will be like to offload that, and I'll be happy to communicate with you all once I have a better sense.
Great, thanks.
Sure. All right, so what I want to do now is move on to recent generative AI developments. And for those of you who are interested in AI or have been able to sort of follow it a little bit, you know that since September, to put it mildly, there have been a few developments. So what we've decided to do, instead of listing them all, which gets a little bit overwhelming, is just to try to think about what different boxes we can put them in terms of what are the implications and impacts. And then we'll talk about that more granularly in just a moment. So the first that I want to call out is that in the last few months, but it's been broader than that, we're seeing shifts in AI that may be especially relevant in the health sciences, in the sense that there are move towards more domain-specific clinical and research applications. and I'll give examples in just a minute. The second is thinking about new developments in multimodal AI systems. So those that can reason across text, images, audio, video, and more, and synthesize data to create new outputs. And Laura is going to show us some examples of that shortly. Thirdly, I want to point out that we're increasingly seeing AI systems embedded into research, educational, and clinical workflows. So instead of having to go to individual tools or places, we're finding that increasingly those are all being combined together. And then fourthly, we actually had a full workshop on AI agents a couple of months ago, but what we're seeing are AI systems that can plan, coordinate, and act across multiple steps rather than responding to a single prompt. And hopefully this won't derail everything, but we might be reaching the pinnacle of that in something that's just was in the New York Times today and made a lot of news last week. It's called Multbook. It's a whole environment in which AI agents are sort of running the show and humans are just sort of standing back and watching what's unfolding. So take a look at that or don't if you're a little bit afraid of the implications. Okay, so in terms of AI for scientific workflows, look at that in a second. Sorry, I forgot to update the title of my slide. So what this is actually about is a recent report that came out in late January from Stanford and Harvard, and it's their State of Clinical AI report, to which you can follow the lead from the QR code in the right. And if you're at all interested in AI and its implications in the clinical sphere, you may want to take a look at this. What I will do now is just sort of highlight a few broad trends from that report. So the first is that we see that, according to this report, that frontier models, and what I mean by that are things like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, so sort of the big LLMs or large language models that we hear a lot about almost every day, that they're showing increases in reasoning and prediction, but that their performance often remains uneven across tasks. So it might perform well in one particular domain, whereas in another domain, it might be bafflingly underwhelming. What we're also seeing is that benchmark success on sort of these synthetic is not the right word, but that's the only word that comes to mind right now. These sort of made up benchmarks are not necessarily good indicators of real world impact. So what these LLMs can do in practice doesn't necessarily meet what we want them to do in the real world. In terms of ROI, which is from the business sense, is a question of what is our return on investment in terms of AI. What we're seeing is that increasingly sort of broadly trained AI models that have a broad data set may not be as useful as more narrow or context specific workflows. And that will align with what we'll expound upon in just a couple of minutes. And then lastly, one of the things that this particular report highlighted is that human AI workflows will remain key to the successful use or implementations of AI systems. Okay, so as some examples of those four trends that I mentioned, I want to look at some recent developments in healthcare platforms. And these are sort of parallel developments that happened about a week apart. The first is that OpenAI released ChatGPT and for health and OpenAI for healthcare. I believe one is available and one is in beta, but if I'm misspeaking, certainly feel free to let me know. So what these are in fact personalized healthcare focused systems inside ChatGPT that encourage users to upload their data from wellness apps and to interact with these systems. According to OpenAI, the goal is to help people better understand things like lab reports or prepare for visits with clinicians and navigate health information within what the system says are privacy controls. OpenAI seems to have positioned this as a consumer as well as a clinician support, but not as a diagnostic tool. And then on the other hand, we have sort of a parallel tool, which is Anthropic, which is Claude. If any of you are familiar with that, Claude has also come up with two of its own platforms. One is a healthcare platform that's analogous to what ChatGPT is. And there's also Claude for life sciences, which is, in my understanding, a little bit more research oriented. Um, so Claude for Health includes HIPAA-ready integrations with medical databases and clinical coding systems. So I think they are perhaps marketing these to healthcare systems. On the research side, we have Claude for Life Sciences that in fact has a clinical trials connector. So you can hook up a clinical trials sort of database right to your Claude platform. They also have a PubMed connector. So this is a way, again, to sort of take your workspace if you use Claude and to embed or connect these other systems as part of your workflow. All right. The last thing I think I want to talk about is the same trend. This is something that came out last week. It's another OpenAI feature. So OpenAI is really leaning hard into healthcare and research domains. This is a platform called Prism, which is developed by OpenAI, and they market it as an AI native scientific writing and collaboration workspace. So from my understanding, what it seems to be is an all-in-one space where one might do all of their research, including drafting, revisions. It has LaTeX built in, so it's designed to support scientific notation. Is operating in a sense that you can put all of your content into one place. And what's intriguing about it, perhaps, is that it is specifically designed to be collaborative and cloud-based. So there is no local setup, there are no subscription fees, and there are no seat limits. So in a sense, one could have a fully functional multi-member team working within this space. And I think this is something that we may see increasingly is that the move from sort of isolated, I use ChatGPT by myself, to these multi-team workflow native AI systems. And with that, I'm going to hand over the discussion to Laura for a little bit, and she'll tell us about some other applications.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm going to just briefly cover a couple of examples of to illustrate what Emily was referring to earlier as evolving AI systems that can reason across text, images, and data together to support interpretation, synthesis, and explanation. So here's a screenshot from Google Notebook LM. It is described as a research and note-taking tool, but its capabilities are more powerful than simply note-taking. As you can see here with the screenshot, it's a good example of how AI can generate and analyze new content from a variety of documents or other resources that users upload to the platform. As you can see from the highlighted box on the upper right-hand side of the screen, it supports the generation of audio and video overviews, flashcards, quiz questions, slides, and more from single or multiple sources that users can then save, export, and use to generate new content. So it's likely that our students are utilizing such tools now to practice their understanding of course content, particularly materials that may be cognitively overwhelming or very long or perhaps inaccessible for any reason in the format in which it's delivered. So for example, and next slide, please, Emily. Here's a specific example of that where I uploaded an open source chapter from a nursing text on health assessment, a quite lengthy chapter, and asked Notebook LM to generate a video overview of the chapter. And it provided me with a 7-minute narrated video on pain, highlighting key points from the chapter. Granted, I am not a subject matter expert, so I did not review it for accuracy. And it did take hours to generate, but the result from my layman's perspective is pretty impressive. Next slide, please, Emily. sorry, just a second. Here's another example of integrated multimodal reasoning. Yeah, possibly so, Peg. Don't remind me, please. This infographic was generated by Eric Topol, who also using Notebook LM and using a recent Nature Medicine article on a multimodal AI model for predicting disease from sleep data, created this infographic. So tools like Notebook LM aren't doing anything very new in terms of images or text on their own, but what's changed is that that integrated multimodal reasoning part, how easily the system can reason across various sources, papers, notes, and figures, and then translate that into a visual representation. So potential uses include study guides, concept maps, all manner of outputs. Next slide, please, Emily. Google Gemini is another platform with similar multimodal capabilities. And again, I'm just showing you a couple just to illustrate that those advancements. In this example, I uploaded the same chapter, health assessment and nursing chapter, and asked it to generate a set of practice quiz questions to aid in my review. The quiz was delivered directly within the same platform. It didn't just generate a copy paste list of questions, but it was able to actually administer the quiz, and I was able to take it directly in the platform. And then, next slide, please, Emily. I want to show you what resulted. As you can see, I didn't do very well, right? I only got a 60% score, but not bad for a novice. Following that, what's really interesting is that it showed me how well I did. It was able to identify strengths and growth areas, analyze my performance, and then based on my performance, it could keep generating new output, flashcards, study guides. And this was all from one single uploaded document, right? So you can see that rapid advancement in terms of its evolving ability to reason and create new different types of output and respond to a user's engagement with that output to create, even more focused output to support user learning. And I think that may be it for me, Emily.
All right, so what I want to do is start wrapping up in terms of the formal part of today's session, and then we hope we have a few minutes for open discussion and to hear what you all are doing and what may be useful to you all as we continue to move forward with this conversation. So I want to wrap up with what I think are two trends around research in teaching. And I'll first focus on research. This is an article, a blog post from Ethan Mollick, who writes prolifically around AI. It came from May 2024, which in AI time reckoning is like an epoch ago, but I still think it's relevant. And so in terms of 4 singularities for research, Mollick identifies the following potential impacts or implications of AI as it permeates sort of every aspect of writing and knowledge production. And so first of all, he notes that increasingly he thinks that AI will change how we write and publish in terms of the proliferation of content and just the increasing volume of content and what that means for the peer review process. Secondly, he talks about how AI is increasingly changing how research is conducted. And to me, that seems like it is happening with not just tools or systems like ChatGPT and Claude as we may know them now, but with the introduction of new platforms like Prism that try to have these sort of multi-collaborator workspaces that have almost everything one might need for knowledge production in the same space. Thirdly, it raises questions about what does our research mean and how does the existence and the ubiquitous of AI change what were formerly barriers to the production of research. And then fourthly, it may also start to change what we choose to research, not just in terms of that AI is maybe part of the process, but when AI becomes a core object of inquiry and how that changes what research might look like. a core part of this, according to Moloch, is that increasingly research will become more cross-disciplinary. And then with our last point, in terms of what does this all mean for research education as an institution of higher learning? And so I wanted to pull from a quote that I found yesterday online from David Wiley, who is an educator very active in terms of both sort of amplifying scholarship as well as producing scholarship. And for me, this seemed like a relevant point to end on in the sense that he talks about how, and it sort of echoes what we said at the beginning, that knowledge and content, the reproduction of content is becoming increasingly common. So what I think Wiley is saying is that we need to start thinking about what happens when answers are especially, he uses the word cheap elsewhere. So what happens when we start thinking about education becoming more of a value judgment? And are we in a place where it becomes more important to know what questions to ask and how to frame problems and how to evaluate responses rather than simply looking for the answers that students give? So that's sort of the arc of what we had hoped to cover today. I do see that there are a couple of questions in the chat, so we can certainly take those, but we'd also just like to hear from you all a little bit in terms of what are you using for AI or what are you doing? And secondly, is there anything that you would like to learn about that was beyond the scope of our workshop today?